So good afternoon, everybody. Naresh, Lachmandas, I just want to say hello and welcome to our peers here on stage. So I just wanted to quickly give you a little backdrop about aerospace defense, and then we'll go into our panel discussion. And how's this work, guys? Okay, sorry. Okay, so given the world we're in, if you go back to, and you heard this from Kevin earlier today as well, we're really dealing with a lot of disruptions. COVID started that in 2020, and all of that really impacted our supply chain and our resources, and extending that to the global conflicts, you've heard enough about that. And then the technology shift, and of course AI has been around for 50 years, but the wave of ChatGPT, Gen AI, Agentic, and what is going to come next is impacting the same issues, supply chain and people, and of course the tariffs that hit us right now. So it's been a significant impact, and as we shift into this thing, this disruptions is really driving the aerospace and defense industry to really think about taking change, especially, we're very risk averse because of protecting our intellectual property and from the bad guys. It's a highly regulated industry. And just for your benefit, the products that this industry creates is technology really at the far edge of it all. Stuff that we won't see in the commercial side for years, right? And we can't talk about some of the stuff that we've seen. But it's our internal operations that's still very old school legacy that we need to change that foundational element as we go forward. So again, from a perspective of drivers for change, this has been the standard model that most A&D companies are looking at. It's supply chain resiliency, leveraging technology, sustainability, cyber threats, et cetera. But really what's important here is as we move forward, we need to up the ante and up the speed of the shift. And if you really think about where there's uncertainty, there's definitely opportunities. You heard that from Kevin today with the economic situation, right? The opportunities, again, is expanding U.S. operations, expanding international. You heard that from Kevin as well. There's a lot of investments being made by our allies in Europe and other places, and opportunity there. Now, of course, for us to leverage the tectonic shifts, to modernize our operations and reduce costs. These tariffs are impacting. One of the, on April 23rd, the CEO of General Dynamics made a statement, and not going to quote, it's basically his position is, the aerospace industry is the largest revenue generation for export for the United States. There's going to be an impact. The question is what? Nobody's quite sure yet. However, GE Aerospace defined about a $500 million cost impact. That's their projections. RTX, about $800 million. Boeing, we've already heard the challenges with the shipments of their planes to the Chinese airlines, et cetera. So this is definitely an impact out there. How do we deal with this? Of course, creating a resilient supply chain. This started with COVID. We need to look at multiple suppliers, multiple ways to make sure that with this geographic political situation that we have a way to manage that through changing our model. Now, I'm not going to go with cost plus, but it's basically the standard A&D model is here's our cost and the DoD gives us a margin and we make our profits that way. You have to be more competitive because the competition globally is stepping into play. Of course, the big cultural shifts as well. So as I talk about the digital threat, and just for your benefit, this industry, this operation is very standard across most companies, with the exception, when you look at the inception to the retirement of a product, in the aerospace and defense industry, was it 30 to 50 years, right? Between the drones, the fighter jets, the ships, the aircraft carriers. It's not like your bottle of water, I drink it, I throw it away. This is maintaining and making sure that equipment is still around and operating and defending our country. It's a different mindset. So from design, build, and sustain it from that perspective. Again, one of the core components there is, of course, the data. And as we're going to leverage the digital thread from the AI perspective and develop a roadmap that's aligned with the business objectives, the data is going to be a very key component. And of course, security and compliance from that perspective. Now, when we talk about data, we're not talking classified data. That's air-gapped from the rest of the world, okay? And if anybody in the audience here happens to mention anything classified, all of you are going to have to go to Guantanamo Bay, and there's no whale watching there, so I just want to call that out, okay? But the whole idea is, this is what it's all about. So as we, again, it's very similar to other industries except for this different mindset, the security compliance components. So that's going to be our discussion item. So I'd like to now turn it over to my peers to introduce themselves, and then we'll start a dialogue. Dave, do you want to take it forward?
Sure. My name is David Whitaker. I'm the CIO of General Atomics. General Atomics is about a $4 billion A&D company that probably not many people have heard about. But we are a big UAV provider. We are the originator of the Predator. We also are big in electromagnetic propulsion. We have launchers for the aircraft carriers now that have transitioned from steam to electromagnetic launchers. We're big in the space industry, and oh, by the way, we do a little bit of fusion as well. We're based here in San Diego, and this entire conference has really resonated with me for some of the things that we're doing and capitalizing on that economic gravity situation.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thanks, Naresh. I'm Kevin Ruggiero. Thanks for having me here. So I'm the Chief Information Officer for Parsons Corporation. This is my second CIO role, and I've actually been aerospace and defense now for about 25 years. I started my career with Northrop Grumman. I stayed there for about 18 years as engineer, moved up eventually to a director role. Then I joined Moog, which is aerospace and defense systems and component supplier, and then moved on to Parsons Corporation, where I am today. Parsons Corporation is a $7 billion global industry, global business that really has two major markets: critical infrastructure, so think roads, bridges, airports, things like that. And the other part of its business is federal defense. So we do a lot of cyber programs and other DoD-focused work. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. Will?
Thank you, Naresh. My name is Will Setiyawan. I'm the Senior Director, the Global ERP Head for Northrop Grumman. So Northrop Grumman has a footprint not only in the US, but also in our allies countries, so UK, Australia, Japan, and South Korea. So what Kevin was saying this morning is resonating with me in terms of actually it's a global company when we actually talk about aerospace and defense. And Northrop Grumman itself is about $40 billion company. We have 100,000 people, employees, and we are producing anything from satellites. Maybe you have heard James Webb Space Telescope. When that was being built, I actually saw the whole process in Redondo Beach. And then we also producing plane, the B-21 stealth bomber, which is the 5th generation stealth. But we also producing ammunitions. So you can imagine the variety that we actually have in the company in terms of producing satellite. That is one unit every 10 to 20 years. Producing plane, which is 1 unit per day, or ammunitions when we talk about millions of SKU during some period of time. So right now, I think we all know what's going on out there in terms of cost efficiency. I think more and more the government is shifting from the cost plus into firm fixed price. So it's important for us to be more efficient, still being able to deliver the products to customers on spec and also managing costs.
Yeah.
So the program performance is the #1 focus right now in the company.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Naresh. My name is Patrick Tremblay. I work at DXC Technology in the aerospace and defense global vertical. DXC is making a big push into AI automation to help solve complex business problems. We operate globally. I got my start in the industry about 25 years ago as well, as head of risk at Bombardier, and I've worked in professional services. So I've worked on both sides of the table, and some of the key themes that we've been hearing for the last few days, I think are well known to people in terms of the importance of focusing on metrics on the cost reduction side, as well as involving people, process, and technology. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you, Patrick. Thank you, everybody. So, Will, can you share your thoughts on Northrop's vision, journey, and how you're dealing with this data strategy and the data integrity in that space?
Yeah, actually, I like to go back to basics. So when we're looking at data, I mean, for the past 2 days, we heard about data is the foundation for all that we want to do with AI. So, but I'm kind of like going back to basics. Where's those data being generated? Those data being generated from your internal system, your PLM, your ERP system, your MES system, your OT systems. So for us, what we're trying to do right now is simplifying their architectures, consolidating all the PLM system, the ERP system, and the MES system. Because at the end of the day, we want to simplify architectures, but also for the data to be able to, when we talk about digital thread, right? You want the data to flow seamlessly from the customers to your engineering system, to your ERP system, all the way back to closed loop going to the customers. So right now, that is one thing that we're trying to solve in terms of making sure that we have simplified architectures, making sure that the data digital thread is there to be able to have the data flowing seamlessly, not only in that loop, but also from your OT system, your operation technology system, your IIoT. So that's what we're trying to do in Northrop. So once we kind of like fix the underlying pipes itself, the next frontier is for us to gain insight to the data itself. So we are actually focusing on, number one is how to basically utilize the data to provide insight for the decision maker. When I talk about decision maker, it's not only your executive, it's your day-to-day, for example, buyer. You want to be able to present the data to the buyer, giving them an insight, as simple as supplier performance. If you're able to give an insight based on the accurate data, then your buyer will be able to react to any of the supply chain disruption before it happens. So that's what we're trying to do. In summary, it's like simplifying the system architectures to basically enabling data to flow seamlessly, and then we built on top of that the ability to gain insight to the data itself that we have.
That's really helpful. So Dave, building on what Will just talked about, what is the critical needs for GA as you're basically looking to expand further internationally, and how do you manage that and from a security standpoint as well? So what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we work in a very regulated environment. All of us have to deal with the security constraints that are leveraged upon us from the U.S. government. So we historically have been a U.S. government supplier, and over the last 2 years, we have expanded to a global reach. The demand for our product has grown globally, with the U.S. kind of withdrawing and saying, I'm not going to be the enforcer or the protector for the rest of the world. The rest of the world said, you know what, then I want to buy the toys that you guys had. And so we have a long list of foreign countries that are interested in our product, primarily our UAV products. And that represents another wrinkle, if you will, in the protection of our data. Our data is not only proprietary, but our data is controlled, considered controlled unclassified information. And much of that data needs to be protected from, segregated from non-US persons. So when I move over into foreign countries, obviously they're full of non-US persons. So how do I protect my data as I sell those products? It's further compounded by the fact that a lot of these contracts that we're evaluating and that we've signed, Kevin mentioned the Qatar agreement. We also recently signed an agreement with India to provide the product. But both of those contracts involve MRO, maintenance, repair, and overhaul, for our product that we sold them native to that country. And of course, they would like us to do manufacturing there as well. Historically, we've always done manufacturing here in San Diego. So this is a brand new arena for us. And we need to protect our data, we need to mark our data, we need to meta tag our data so that we can make sure that the data is seen by those that need to see the data and segregated from those that can't see the data. So we're taking steps to put that into our ERP system, our MES system, our manufacturing system, and then we're trying to push that as well into the OT side. OT is not part of IT, but we have a very close relationship with the OT organization, and so we're pushing these requirements down into the OT organization so that we can establish that same sort of data protection all the way down to the SCADA, the PCL, the manufacturing machines, so that we're sure that not only the data is secure, but we also have the cyber controls so that that data does not leak out. So it creates a whole new facet, if you will, for data protection. It's really easy when you're just selling your stuff to the US government. But when you move outside the boundaries of the United States and you start to sell your product outside, the requirements are still there, but I have to apply them in a different manner.
No, that was very informative. By the way, if anybody wants to buy a Predator toy, reach out to Dave. So actually, we'll have a follow-up on that one. So Kevin, you're dealing with two different segments, right? The commercial and the defense side. What are some of the drivers at Parsons and leveraging these technologies and managing the risks?
Yeah, it is a big challenge, and so I dealt with that at Moog in particular. Again, so Moog had half of its business was for military business, and half of it was commercial. So all different kinds of aircraft. I know Boeing deals with this too, RTX, and Parsons too has kind of a split business. We have business in Middle East and Saudi Arabia. And as David was alluding to, we get some rather challenging requirements on how we manage those data flowed down from the government, from the U.S. government, and you don't want to apply all of those requirements to all data in the company because it's extremely onerous, and the businesses that need to operate more agile, fast, those commercial businesses, they can't afford to be slowed by some of those requirements. So you have to find the right balance. And what I've learned over the last several years was the most important thing is it really comes down to the basics, as Will was saying. Data governance. You have to understand how data moves through your organization. How does it come into your company? How does it move within your company? And how is it dispersed? And I think what I've learned is the structured data, you kind of have to have a different strategy, one for the structured data and one for the unstructured data. So we always talk about things like data tagging and data loss prevention programs, and those can work. Those are really, I think, the best strategy when dealing with some of the less structured data, things like email and SharePoint websites, things like that. You can tag those things, and then there's technology solutions to help it. The structured data is another interesting challenge. That's going to be like your ERP systems, your MES, your PLMs, and you can generally map out your business processes and see that information flow across your company. And then you need to be able to apply some logic. This is the stuff I need to protect. This is the stuff that is not really maybe a problem. This is my regulated data. This is my data that does not need to be regulated. And apply the rules directly and specifically to those, creating more of an enclave. These are my protected systems. These are the more open systems. And by applying all of those rules and regulations to as small a system as possible, you can still allow your business to thrive and find that right balance.
Oh, that was helpful. Thank you. So Patrick, you've done some interesting work at Bombardier and other entities. How do you help facilitate this data integrity? And I think one of the key areas that might be helpful to our peers here is how do we anticipate and deal with the ROI and the value prop? So would like to hear your points of view on that.
Yeah, thank you. That's especially relevant in the context of multiple acquisitions. So we were talking at the time of Learjet, de Havilland acquired from Boeing, Canadair from the government as well, and Short Brothers from the UK government. So 4 distinct organizations with their cultures, their ways of doing things, and the information really and the data flows, back to a point we just heard about, was broken, basically, right? So it could not be relied upon, The quality was not consistent. And at the end of the day, we couldn't really measure things. So I think one of the keys or silver bullets that we found at the time was to implement a center of excellence with the key stakeholders coming both from corporate and each of the business units and the people on the shop floor level. And once we got that engagement and that lineup, if you will, things started to fall into place. Of course, you've got to look at the business processes, you've got to do the mapping, you've got to do the metrics, but it was especially challenging, and I want to emphasize this is a journey. It's not something that you flip a switch and it happens overnight. So patience is a virtue, but incremental change, continuous improvement, adoption of quality programs like Six Sigma really help, and a laser focus on return on investment and measuring every step of the way.
Thank you. So I'm gonna pick on something that I think that you guys all talked about on data tagging. Now, I get the point of making sure that the stuff doesn't leave the environment, but also within your domain, I'm sure there's some data that, Naresh cannot access, or Dave can, et cetera, et cetera. So what's your thought process? Because as we're talking about leveraging some of these technologies, Gen AI, whatever, ChatGPT, secure ChatGPT, I want to qualify that up front, that's an equivalent tool. What are your thoughts on how to facilitate that and get to that domain so you can comfortably manage these type of technologies?
I can answer what we're doing with regard to ChatGPT or Gen AI or large language models. Because we have to be so protective of our data, it's hard to be able to leverage the cloud, right? The commercial cloud in order to leverage the promise, to realize the promise that Gen AI or large language models offer to us that are doing business. We operate in a very cloistered environment. Our data is in a secure cloud, right? Amazon has a Gov cloud. Microsoft Azure has a GCC high environment. These are classified, not classified as secret or top secret, but they classify it as a FedRAMP certified high environment. It does not have that connectivity to the cloud. And we went out and we pulled into that tenant, that secure tenant, the OpenAI model, and we pull that into our environment, and then we can leverage that on our data, and our data never leaves our environment. And we can gain insights into what our data is telling us with regard to cross multiple programs or multiple projects, and not worry about the data going out. Now I can go out to ChatGPT, out to the commercial cloud, I can query data, grab data, pull it into my tenant, and then use it in addition to my particular data. So I'm cloistered on that data, and I'm able to use the Gen AI, the large language model, to ascertain new perspectives. And that's how we're doing it right now. We didn't open up, we created our own AI genie, if you will. We're not allowing it to be used pervasively in our environment because we still have problems with regards to how to secure data. I may have something that's controlled unclassified information, and I have two pieces of controlled unclassified information, but if I do a search and it combines those two pieces, that particular data becomes classified, and that's a problem for me. So we've been very selective with regards to what we open it to. Finance, procurement, all day long. I can do queries with regards to how I'm spending my money, what do I spend on travel, whatever. Engineering data gets a little more ticklish, just because of that particular, they call that classification by aggregation, and that's frowned upon, right, for us in our environment.
Thank you, that was very helpful. Kevin?
Yeah, I think David gave a pretty complete answer there. Maybe the one thing I'll add to that is the need for training, right? Tagging our data is just one of those sort of, I don't know, kind of annoying realities of being in a regulated industry. Like we have to tag our data and be able to identify it. And the user base is a major part of that, right? It'd be great if everything was perfectly automated. I haven't seen that yet. I haven't seen that successful quite yet. I've seen a lot of false starts with data tagging programs over the years, but it is getting better. And I think a critical success factor to a good tagging program is helping the users understand why it's important, how those tags are used. We're not just wasting their time when we're asking them to categorize information or categorize their documents. It's important to maintaining compliance, maintaining certifications, all those types of things, and then helping them understand what the different tags all mean. Driving that compliance, driving that understanding is a key part of a successful program.
Will, how about you? But nothing classified, please.
Yeah, I think there's a misconception in terms of of course we are worried about our data is proliferating outside the firewall. I think that's a given. But even internally within the company, because we are managing different program with different clearance level, that's also the challenge in terms of sometimes one program doesn't want to have a different secret clearance, the other one is top secret. Obviously, you cannot actually combine all of these informations. And just like what David was saying, the tricky part for me is that one single information might not be a secret, like A might not be a secret, but when you combine A, B, C in aggregate, now it's becoming a secret. So now, how do you control your AI, ChatGPT or something like that environment? Because the idea is that when the data becoming aggregated like that, it's becoming top secret. You have a different multiple clearance level, even within the same company with a different program. So all this complexity of that, I think that's why I think the adoptions in the A&D companies are slower than the commercial part. And we don't have the answer yet, but have a lot of questions still.
That's why we're also stressed, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Patrick, your thoughts?
No, I was just emphasizing, I think it places a premium on people being aware of how is the data used, where does it go, and you as an organization really mapping your processes properly.
Yep.
Because unless you have that macro view and people know where they fit and the roles they play in the output state, things fall through the cracks.
We've actually, we have an annual security refresher training, right? You got to know how to behave, how to control your data, how to act in a secure manner.
Yep.
We've actually added a component to that, dealing with Gen AI and large language models. What you can do, what you can't do, and how to effectively use AI. That's a requirement for us now. So we have everybody go through that. We took considerable effort on the training piece with our folks, right? As soon as AI came out there, everybody wanted to use it, right? And they wanted to, you've all read the news, right? Where Sony or Panasonic exposed their code because they had bugs in it, right? And some really smart developer says, hey, threw it out in the cloud and said, find my bug, right? Well, now your code is public domain, right? Because it's out there in the cloud. I didn't want that happening to my software that I use to control my UAVs, right? So there was considerable effort spent on the training, making sure that the weakest link in this chain is the people piece, right? And you got to make sure that you're profuse and repeated communication with regards to the acceptable use of Gen AI. We didn't want to stamp it out because there's a significant promise of productivity and gain by using AI, but we want you to use it the right way.
Thank you. That was very helpful. So how about this? So let's each take about a minute to go to takeaway from this topic, this subject, and pass it on to Dave.
Yeah, Kevin's keynote really resonated with me because he talked about the economic gravity, right? And that's what's driving, economics, globalization will find a way, right? Keep thinking of Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park, right? It'll find a way. And that's really where we are, right? With regards to the market that we play in. And our leadership was very forward thinking in prepping for this economic reality, because it didn't happen overnight. 2-3 years ago, we were talking about expanding globally, and here we are, and we're in the right place at the right time. So it's like, we got to think big, we got to think forward, we got to be agile, and we've got to be looking outside the box, to overuse an overused term, but we got to be thinking bigger picture than just an exercise in continuous improvement.
So true, so true.
Yeah.
Kevin?
One of the things that stood out to me was the difference between sort of the linear progress versus transformation. I spent a lot of time thinking about that. I can't say that I figured it out by any stretch, what transformation really should look like and what it will ultimately be. But I think I'll find myself in the continuous pursuit of that until I do. But the one thing that along the way, one thing that seems to remain true is, and someone told this to me once, and it's continued to be true, there's nothing yet that slays the garbage in, garbage out monster. Mm-hmm. And it comes down to data quality, data governance, everything that we're trying to do, whether we're talking small progress, massive transformation, AI, ERP transformation, et cetera, data quality will always impact the value that can be obtained. And so I think anytime, in my business or any other business really, you can spend time improving data quality and getting that right, it's generally going to be a worthwhile investment.
Thank you. Will?
Yeah, I think what I got for the past 2 days is, I think it's valuable to learn the art of the possible, because we can throw a lot of reasons why the adoption is slower on the A&D industry. But when I actually talk to people from other industries, seeing the speakers, it's kind of like forming that what's possible, the art of possible out there. Yeah. And it's kind of like I'm asking myself then, maybe we should be more bold in doing this. Yes, security is like the most important thing, obviously, at this point, but there's a lot of things that we can actually do more. So thinking more broadly, be more bold. So that's what I take from the past 2 days.
Thank you.
So I like that, be more bold, and I think my takeaway and what we're giving a lot of thought to is the adoption of AI. But we're not going to stop this. The train's already left the station. But perhaps there's a path towards a controlled framework and adoption through a continuous improvement cycle where you implement it incrementally instead of thinking there's a big bang that's going to happen. Because usually when you think that, it falls. It falls apart. It doesn't work. And I go back 25 years with ERP implementations, whatnot, that I've experienced and ran. And I think we need to be bold, think aggressively, but have a very deliberate game plan and measure and make sure we stay on track.
Big bang, we don't want to leave a smoking crater, right? That's what it is.
Yeah. So my takeaway, honestly, is disruption is the new norm. Traditionally, most companies would hunker down during any disruption. Mm-hmm. But given the world we live in today, we need to be more aggressive, more agile. Thank you for my peers here for sharing your insights. I think this is really wonderful. I'm so honored to be here. And thank you guys for attending. I hope you enjoyed this, understood the correlation and how the aerospace defense industry works and operates. And I really want to reach out to the Avasant team who facilitate this event, the sessions, and appreciate all their efforts to get us where we are today. Thank you all.
Good deal.
Thank you so much to our